Imagine bringing in an animal to solve a problem, only to see it create an even bigger one. In the late 1970s, Japan had a serious issue. Venomous snake bites were a big danger, especially in rural areas. Hoping to fix this, they introduced mongooses, thinking they would control the snake population and save lives. But over the next 25 years, something unexpected happened. Instead of solving the problem, Japan found itself facing an even bigger environmental mess. This is the surprising story of how one decision led to a new problem and the hard work it took to set things right. Let's explore why Japan's introduction of snake killers shocked everyone.
This is a habu, which is a large Japanese pit viper.
For a long time, venomous habu snake bites were a serious problem in some regions of Japan. These snakes greatly affected people's lives. In 1980 alone, around 400 people were bitten, and unfortunately, some didn't survive. While Japan has many venomous snakes, the most dangerous are the larger species. Like the habu and their relatives, the eastern pit vipers. These snakes belong to the same family as rattlesnakes and puff adders, and their distant cousins include coral snakes and cobras. So you can imagine the challenge the Japanese faced, and it happened quite frequently. With such dangerous snakes living nearby, people were constantly at risk of being bitten, making these venomous snakes a serious concern for many years. Before we move further recently, an image has gone viral, showing nearly 100 rats climbing a mountain. This sight is quite concerning, yet the exact location remains unconfirmed. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this phenomenon. Please share your comments below. The bites from habu snakes were very serious because, for a long time, there was no antidote. Even after one was developed, it was hard to access. The antidote came in liquid form, which meant it couldn't be stored in rural areas that lacked electricity or proper storage facilities. Unfortunately, most snake bites happened in those rural areas. Setting up power lines took a long time and cost a lot of money, and creating a new antidote seemed just as challenging, if it was even possible. This made it even more difficult for people to get the help they needed after a snake bite. Japan eventually came up with what seemed like a brilliant idea. Bring in an animal that eats snakes and is immune to their venom. Of course, like many plans, things didn't go quite as expected. But don't worry, they've got it all under control now. So grab a cup of coffee, and here's a little reminder to hit that like button before we dive into this story. You have probably guessed which animal we are talking about: the mongooses. In 1979, around 30 small Indian mongooses were brought to Oshima Island to help with local problems. They were not only meant to control the habu snake population, but also to reduce the number of rats as an added benefit. Mongooses naturally live in countries like India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and Pakistan. So Japan's wildlife was not prepared for these unexpected newcomers. Their arrival changed the balance of the local ecosystem in ways that no one had anticipated. By 1993, the mongoose population on Oshima Island had grown significantly, and the Ministry of the Environment became worried. It's easy to see why officials were concerned, as the mongoose number skyrocketed to about 10,000 by the year 2000. Did the habu snake population decrease? Technically yes, but not because of the mongooses. Despite the initial hopes for their success, these mongooses showed little interest in hunting the venomous habu snakes. Instead, they focused on easier prey, which meant that the original problem of snake bites remained a challenge for the local community. At first, mongooses looked like the perfect solution for dealing with snakes. They're known for being fast and agile, making them great hunters, especially against cobras, which are related to the habu. Another advantage is that mongooses have special receptors that help them resist cobra venom, meaning they can survive bites that would be deadly for most other animals. Plus, evolution has given them quick reflexes and sharp teeth, making them effective at delivering fatal bites to snakes. In theory, mongooses seemed like the best choice for controlling the snake population and keeping the area safe from snake bites. But there was a problem. Mongooses are active during the day, while the habu snakes are nocturnal, meaning they don't often cross paths. Even when they did meet, mongooses still weren't very effective at hunting snakes. Snakes can be tricky to catch, and going after them requires a lot of effort. Why bother when there's plenty of easier food around like mice and rabbits? It's like choosing between a difficult gourmet meal and fast food. Except the gourmet meal can fight back. So, despite their skills as snake hunters, mongooses turned out to be completely useless for the job they were brought in to do. Meanwhile, mongooses were very successful at breeding. By the year 2000, the Japanese government started a program to reduce their population. Since then, about 32,000 mongooses have been captured. The last recorded capture happened in April 2018, and there have been no new cases reported since then. This led experts to declare that the mongoose population on Amami Oshima had been completely eradicated. The Ministry of the Environment announced this success with excitement, even though the mongooses probably wouldn't share in that joy. But how did Japan manage to get rid of the invasive mongooses? The journey wasn't easy. At first, traps were set up along the roads, but they didn't work well because they rarely attracted the mongooses. It soon became clear that a more thorough strategy was needed. Eventually, they began using specially designed traps, toxic bait, and attractants, substances that lure animals with their smell. They also used different monitoring techniques, including search dogs. This multifaceted approach proved to be effective and made a big difference in controlling the mongoose population. On a graph showing the mongoose population, the line illustrates the decline in numbers, while the bars indicate the increasing number of traps set. These new traps were specially designed for mongooses, ensuring that other animals wouldn't get caught. Local civilians also played a crucial role in this effort. Since 2005, teams of mongoose hunters, made up of locals and volunteers, have been roaming the forests and mountains, dedicating countless hours to trapping mongooses. Their hard work has significantly contributed to the success of the eradication program. Some people might wonder why all this effort was needed. Couldn't they have just left the mongooses alone? Sure, they weren't native to the island, but was it really necessary to go to such lengths to get rid of them? The answer is yes. Instead of helping control the snake population as hoped, the mongooses began preying on the island's native species, including the Amami rabbit and other local animals. Amami Oshima is a subtropical island and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which means it is home to many rare and vulnerable species. The mongooses specifically targeted the Amami rabbit, which is now endangered. This made removing the mongooses not just necessary, but crucial for preserving the island's unique ecosystem. These Amami rabbits are often called living fossils, because they are the last survivors of an ancient species of Asian rabbits. Long ago, these rabbits roamed the mainland, but now they exist only on 2 small islands. Sadly, the mongooses have drastically reduced their chances of survival. Mongooses have also severely impacted the populations of Ryukyu rats, which are now at risk of extinction. In total, about 15 native species have been harmed by the introduction of mongooses, which were originally brought in with good intentions. The farming sector also faced challenges because of the mongooses. These animals easily preyed on farm birds, ate fruits from fields, and even spread diseases to livestock that they didn't consume. In just 20 years, the habitat for small animals shrank by 40%. It became clear that introducing mongooses to the small Japanese islands was extremely harmful. Islands are unique ecosystems, home to species that aren't used to dealing with predators and don't know how to defend themselves. The arrival of a new predator would cause problems anywhere, but islands are particularly vulnerable. If that predator is a mongoose, which is known for eating almost anything it can catch, the damage becomes even worse. The situation on Amami Oshima highlighted the importance of careful consideration before introducing new species to fragile island ecosystems. It took nearly 25 years to eliminate the mongooses, and almost 50 years to complete the entire project. While getting rid of so many mongooses might seem cruel, Japan made the right decision to protect local species. Invasive species can cause serious harm if they are allowed to spread unchecked. If you don't control them early, it becomes much harder to remove them later, sometimes even impossible. Japan's success in eradicating mongooses on Amami Oshima is impressive, especially since it's one of only 9 cases in the world where mongooses have been completely removed. It's also the only instance where this has been achieved on such a large island. This experience shows the importance of acting quickly when dealing with invasive species to protect native wildlife and maintain the health of unique ecosystems like those found on Amami Oshima. To give you some context, habu snake bites have become much less of a problem. By 2020, the number of bites dropped to around 60 each year. However, this improvement wasn't because of the mongooses. Instead, people started taking more preventative measures and antidotes became easier to access, which helped prevent fatalities. Since 1992, there hasn't been a single reported death from a habu bite. A graph shows this progress clearly with black bars representing the cases where antidotes were given. The overall situation has drastically improved, showing how important it is to have proper medical care and education available. While the mongooses were not the solution, the efforts made by the community have certainly made a positive impact in reducing snake bites and keeping people safe from harm. However, the battle against invasive species isn't finished yet. Mongooses still exist on other islands, and the lessons learned from Amami Oshima are being applied in other parts of Japan. For example, a team of specialists is set to head to northern Okinawa, where mongooses have also been spotted. There's a real chance that mongooses from Okinawa could invade Amami Oshima again, forcing Japan to restart its efforts. Mongooses were introduced to Okinawa during the Meiji era, about 70 years before they were brought to Amami Oshima. 17 mongooses were released at that time, and the conditions in Okinawa are more suitable for them, with a warmer climate and a habitat similar to their natural range. Because of this, the birth and survival rates of mongooses are higher in Okinawa, making the situation more challenging for conservation efforts in Japan. For now, the mongoose population in northern Okinawa is being controlled, but in the central and southern parts, they continue to thrive. Fences have been set up in Okinawa to prevent mongooses from spreading, and they seem to be effective. The fences aren't very tall, but they have an L shape at the bottom to stop mongooses from digging under them, and mongooses typically don't climb over them. However, similar to Amami Oshima, the survival of 3 endemic bird species on Okinawa now depends on controlling the mongoose population. If the story of bringing mongooses to control pests sounds familiar, you're right. Japan isn't the first country to try something called biological control. There's even a whole field of science dedicated to this method, which involves using one species to control another. Typically, when people attempt biological control, they start by researching the pest and its natural predator. Then, they do even more research to see if introducing the predator could harm other species in the area. Only after all these thorough studies do they usually release the predator to do its job. People have been practicing biological control for a long time, and often with success. A famous example is farmers using predatory insects to protect their fruit trees and gardens. While this method can be effective, it's important to approach it carefully to avoid unintended consequences, as seen in the case of the mongooses in Japan. What about the mongoose? The small Asian mongoose has been introduced to places like Cuba, Croatia, Jamaica, Haiti, Puerto Rico, the Lesser Antilles, Belize, Honduras, Panama, and several other countries. In many cases, the introductions worked out well. However, Hawaii decided to give it a try in the 1800s. At that time, Hawaii's most valuable crop was sugarcane, and the plan was to use mongooses to help control the rat population that was damaging the sugarcane fields. From the mid-1800s to the mid-1900s, Hawaiian sugar plantations faced a big problem with rats that loved to chew on sweet sugarcane stalks. The rats caused a lot of damage, and plantation owners were desperate for a solution. In 1872, these planners found an article about how Caribbean sugar producers used mongooses to control their rat problem. The idea seemed simple: bring mongooses from India to eat the rats, and everything would be fixed. So, in the 1880s, Hawaiian planters imported 72 mongooses from Jamaica to the Big Island. Their offspring were later sent to plantations on other islands, including Maui, Molokai, and Oahu, hoping to solve the rat issue once and for all. Even back then, some people on the Big Island were skeptical about the mongoose plan. They thought more research was needed to see how the animals did in the Caribbean before bringing them to Hawaii. Unfortunately, no one listened to these skeptics, and soon the plan's major flaw became clear. Rats are nocturnal, meaning they are active only at night, while mongooses are active during the day. This meant they rarely crossed paths. Instead of solving the rat problem, the mongooses began to prey on native Hawaiian species, especially birds and turtles. The eggs of these animals were easy targets, and the situation started to worsen. What was supposed to help ended up creating new challenges for Hawaii's unique wildlife. The situation worsened as native species were wiped out. The government eventually put up barriers to keep mongooses out of nature reserves, but it seemed Hawaii had missed the chance to act. Today, controlling the mongoose population has become very difficult, almost impossible. The mongooses are responsible for the extinction of at least 8 native bird species in Hawaii, many of which were on the federal endangered species list. This has created a serious problem for the island's unique wildlife, as these animals are now gone forever due to the introduction of mongooses. Interestingly, the Hawaiian government doesn't call the mongooses' introduction biological control because the animals didn't go through an environmental impact assessment before being brought in, and Hawaii wasn't the only place to face issues after introducing mongooses. In 1872, a British colonist brought mongooses to a sugar plantation in Jamaica to handle the rat problem. But instead of eating the rats, the mongooses spread across the island, causing local bird and reptile populations to drop. With fewer animals to eat insects and other small creatures, a tick outbreak followed, making things even worse. The colonist complained to British authorities, but they dismissed his worries, claiming that nature would balance itself out. Spoiler alert, it didn't. The introduction of mongooses caused serious harm to Jamaica's unique ecosystems. Hawaii's experience, like Jamaica's, serves as a lesson in how introducing non-native species without proper research can have disastrous consequences for local ecosystems. Out of lizards. On 4 small islands in the Caribbean Sea, St. Croix, ground lizards scurry through fallen leaves, fighting and foraging to survive. Sadly, these lizards were completely wiped out on the island they were named after, St. Croix, because of 2 major threats: the introduction of hungry mongooses and land redevelopment. On 2 neighboring coastal islands, only about 400 lizards remained, the lucky ones that escaped being eaten. Luckily, people raised the alarm in time. Conservation efforts began, and the lizards were moved to safer areas. Thanks to these efforts, their population has now grown to nearly 3,000 individuals. Scientists are working hard not just to prevent their extinction, but also to return these resilient lizards to their namesake island, giving them a chance to reclaim their original home. This work is essential for preserving the unique wildlife of the Caribbean and ensuring the survival of these special lizards. A 4,000-year-old idea. In a recent study of 4,000-year-old tombs in Egypt, researchers found a fascinating drawing showing a person leading an animal that looks like a mongoose on a leash. This is the only image of its kind discovered in Egyptian art, and it clearly shows both a collar and a leash. Although mongooses have never been fully domesticated through controlled breeding, some cultures have kept them as pets. The main reason for this is to help control pests like snakes, rats, and mice, which can cause problems in homes and farms. This ancient drawing offers a glimpse into how mongooses were valued long ago. Interestingly, scientists think the mongoose shown in the tomb may have been used to scare off birds, making hunting easier. There's even some debate about a second leash in the drawing. Some people believe it's attached to a dog, while others think it could be a hornless goat. This drawing adds to our understanding of how ancient Egyptians might have interacted with animals in their daily lives. Speaking of mongooses taking on surprising roles, in Sri Lanka, where dogs are usually used to sniff out illegal substances, a new idea emerged: using mongooses instead. Locals have relied on mongooses for generations to chase away cobras from their farms. So why not train them to detect illegal items? A grant of $50,000 was awarded for a pilot project, and a specialist was hired. The National Zoo even offered its grounds for training, creating a unique opportunity to see if mongooses could adapt to this new task. The plan was to release a few mongooses into a cargo container filled with car parts. If they detected anything illegal, they would come out with bristling tails. Believe it or not, mongooses can be trained, and they passed the test with flying colors. Unfortunately, due to changes in leadership and political issues, the project was forgotten. It's a real shame because it would have been incredible to see mongooses working as customs officers. Just imagine them in action, sniffing out contraband. I would even watch a sequel to Zootopia featuring mongooses as the new animal heroes. In the end, the battle against invasive species is tough, but Japan's story proves it can be won. Let's take these lessons forward to protect nature's balance. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe for more amazing videos.